A millionaire's mansion had been silent for a year, until a barefoot homeless boy snuck in and made his paralyzed daughter laugh. What happened next will break your heart, and heal it at the same time. The Morgan estate had always been a symbol of power. Tall gates, endless gardens, and a mansion that looked like it had been built to impress the whole world. But inside, it was quiet. Too quiet. For over a year, laughter had been a stranger here. Ever since the accident, David Morgan's life and his daughter's had been reduced to routines, medical appointments, and the constant ache of what if. Sophie, his 5-year-old little girl, once ran barefoot through the garden chasing butterflies. She had hair like golden sunlight, curls bouncing as she laughed, and eyes that seemed to hold every dream a child could have. But one rainy evening, a car accident changed everything. Now Sophie sat in a sleek black wheelchair. The doctors said the damage to her spine was too severe. No surgery, no treatment. No amount of David's millions could bring back her legs. She could no longer run, dance, or even stand. Day after day, she sat by the tall windows of the living room, staring out into the garden she once ruled like her own kingdom. David had tried everything. Specialists in 3 different countries. Therapies so advanced they barely existed outside research labs. Even strange miracle cures whispered about in private circles. Every time, the result was the same. Nothing. And each failed attempt didn't just crush his hope. It chipped away at the man he used to be. One warm afternoon, David stepped outside to get some air. He expected to see the usual. Sophie sitting quietly in the garden, maybe holding a book she wasn't really reading, her gaze far away. But what he saw instead made him stop in his tracks. Sophie was laughing. Not the polite little smile she sometimes forced to make him feel better. No, this was different. It was wild, loud, real. Her hands clapped together as she leaned forward in her wheelchair, her curls bouncing. And in front of her was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 9 years old. Barefoot. His skin was warm bronze, his black curls untamed. His clothes were old, loose, and dusty. His knees were scraped, his ankles marked with dirt. But his eyes danced with mischief. The boy was performing, not just dancing. He hopped from side to side, spun in silly circles, and threw his arms in the air like a clown pretending to be a king. He tripped dramatically, caught himself, then pointed straight at Sophie as if daring her not to laugh. She laughed harder. David's first instinct was anger. This was his private property. The gates were supposed to keep strangers out. Where was security? But then he saw Sophie's face, her eyes alive, her cheeks flushed with excitement. And something in him told him to wait. He stepped back behind a marble column and stayed there, watching. The boy noticed him for the briefest second. David expected him to run. Instead, the boy's grin widened. He twirled, bowed low like a stage performer, and made Sophie clap so loudly her laughter seemed to echo across the lawn. David didn't understand it, but he knew whatever was happening was precious. Too precious to interrupt. For several minutes, David watched. The boy danced, fell into the grass, rolled over, popped back up, never breaking eye contact with Sophie. And Sophie, she wasn't just laughing. She was moving, her arms lifted, trying to copy him. Her toes, those little toes that had been still for so long, twitched inside her sandals. David's heart squeezed. Was it real? Or was he imagining it? By the time the boy finally bowed again, Sophie was wiping tears of laughter from her cheeks. Again, she squealed. The boy grinned, ready to start again, but David slipped away quietly. He didn't want the magic to vanish. The next afternoon, David didn't hide. Sophie was already waiting in the garden, looking toward the gate every few seconds. When the boy finally appeared, slipping in from a small gap in the hedge, she lit up. "Ready for the show?" he asked with a grin. Yes, she clapped, bouncing in her chair. Before he could begin, David stepped forward. The boy froze, his smile fading. I'm sorry, he blurted. I didn't mean. It's all right, David said firmly but not unkindly. I just want to talk. Sophie's eyes widened. Daddy, please don't make him go. He's my friend. Her voice trembled, carrying a desperation David hadn't heard in months. What's your name? David asked, crouching down to the boy's level. Eli, the boy replied after a pause. How old are you, Eli? 9. I think. You think. Eli looked down. I don't have a birthday cake or anything. Nobody ever told me. David's chest tightened. Where do you live? Sometimes at the old bus station. Sometimes in the laundry room at the apartments if no one's there. I just find places. Sophie was gripping the arms of her chair now. He's not bad, Daddy. He makes me happy. David looked at her. Really looked, and saw it. The color in her cheeks, the light in her eyes. Why did you come here? David asked Eli. I was walking by, Eli said softly, and I heard music. I saw her, and she looked sad. So I started dancing, just to make her smile. But then she told me to keep going. His voice cracked slightly. I wasn't trying to steal anything, sir. She just looked like she needed it. David stayed silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Sophie. How do you feel right now? Happy, she said without hesitation. Like I can move again, even if I can't. David glanced down, and there it was, the tiniest twitch of her toes. It wasn't much, but to him, it was everything. He didn't tell the guards to chase Eli away. In fact, he told them the opposite. If you see that boy, let him in. And so, Eli became a daily visitor to the Morgan garden. Every afternoon, without fail, he would slip in with the same wide grin and boundless energy. Sometimes he carried little treasures. A flower he found on the roadside, a pebble shaped like a heart, or even a crumpled candy wrapper he thought looked too shiny to throw away. But most days, he brought nothing at all except himself. And that was more than enough. Sophie began to change. Her arms, once so still, now moved constantly, clapping, swaying, even pointing as she tried to copy Eli's dance moves. She began leaning forward in her chair, spinning its wheels in small circles, laughing every time Eli exaggerated his own spins. One afternoon, Sophie's doctor came for a routine checkup. After the tests, he looked genuinely puzzled. I don't know what you've been doing, he said to David. But keep doing it. Her muscles are responding better than I expected. She's engaged. This kind of emotional stimulation is rare, and it's working. David nodded, but inside, he knew exactly why. It wasn't medicine. It was joy. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was late afternoon. The sky painted in streaks of gold and pink. Eli was dancing to an old jazz song playing softly from the outdoor speakers. Sophie was clapping along, her cheeks flushed from laughter. And then she placed her hands on the armrests of her chair. David froze, watching. With a determined little grunt, Sophie pushed herself upward. Her body trembled, her arms shook, but she lifted herself halfway out of the wheelchair. The highest she had risen in over a year. She held it for 3 whole seconds. 3 seconds that felt like forever. When she dropped back into the seat, panting, her face broke into the widest grin David had seen since before the accident. I did it, she gasped. Eli cheered, spinning in a wild circle before dropping to his knees beside her. You're amazing, he said, beaming. David swallowed hard, his throat tight. He knelt beside them, brushing a curl from Sophie's forehead. You are, he said softly. Then he turned to Eli. And so are you. That night, after Sophie had gone to bed, David found Eli sitting quietly on the back steps. The boy looked smaller now, the shadows making him seem even thinner. You can't keep living like this, David said gently. Eli shrugged. I've been doing it my whole life. Not anymore, David replied, his voice firm. From today, you live here. Eli's head jerked up. What? You'll have your own room, meals, and you'll go to school. Eli frowned in confusion. Why? You don't even know me. David's eyes softened. Because you gave my daughter something no doctor, no therapy, no amount of money could give her. You gave her hope. And I won't let the person who did that sleep on a cold floor again. For a moment, Eli didn't speak. His eyes glistened, and he quickly looked away. But David had already seen the tears forming. Unescorted The next day, the garden felt different. It wasn't just a place for therapy anymore. It was alive. Eli danced. Sophie clapped. David stood watching from the shade, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The mansion, once a silent prison of grief, now rang with laughter, music, and the sound of two children discovering what happiness felt like again. For the first time in a long time, David Morgan realized something. Sometimes the most precious miracles don't come from hospitals or specialists or wealth. They come from the unexpected, from kindness, from friendship, from a barefoot boy who decided to dance in the garden. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more emotional, real-life tales that touch the heart. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We'd love to hear your story too.